Hello and welcome to the Wells Learning Lounge. My name is Bryant Yoder and I'll be your host today as we talk about FlySto. But first, a little bit about us. We are a Cirrus Authorized Service Center out of Hutchinson, Kansas called Wells Aircraft. We also have a FBO here as well as Branson West, Missouri. So feel free to stop by anytime, say hello, get some fuel, call about service. Either one works great. We are going to be diving into FlySto. A lot of our customers, we're finding, have not heard about FlySto. We are very impressed with its capabilities. We feel like it's something that we need to let the public know about. I don't think there's enough services out there that are talking about it. I was at a CPPP event for Cirrus Owners and Pilots Association, and they had a whole seminar on it, and I was very happy to hear that. I think the word needs to get out a little bit more. I have been using this for about a year and a half now. It is part of my job, which is analyzing aircraft information, engine data, things like that, looking for items that maybe aren't as visible as you're going through the annual. Most of it has to do with the flying side of things. If people are flying and they notice weird things as they're flying, they can let us know. We can take a look at it, diagnose it, and help assist our techs in getting to the bottom of it and ultimately fixing your aircraft so we can get it back out flying the blue skies. So first off, on FlySto, this is the main website, and it kind of goes through what all we need to see on here. As they say right here, effortlessly convert avionics and data and app logs into actionable insights. What does that look like? How do you do that? Well, first you sign up and it'll ask your username. I think it's also email, and you'll set up a password. Secondly, what works with FlySto? As you can see on this site here, a large suite of Garmin products. So for us Cirrus folk, G1000 is your Perspective, G1000 NXI is your Perspective Plus, also Perspective Touch also works. Your G3000, so I haven't put a jet in here yet, but supposedly it's something that we can do. G3X, if you've retrofitted your Cirrus with G3X Touch, G5s, GI275 if you've done the standby option. All of these things are able to convert their data into FlySto. The other one that a lot of you Avidyne users are looking for is, does it work? Avidyne Integra does work. There is some data that will be missing, but your engine numbers will all be in there. So that's super helpful. The catch on each one of these is you have to click on it and it'll tell you how to do it. So simple. Take your data logging card out of the top slot in your MFD and get the data log file, convert all those CSV files into your FlySto, and I'll demonstrate all this later as well. The other thing that we can do, so if you're on Integra, after a flight, power off the MFD, very important. Make sure that you have a USB stick that is using the FAT file. That is number one rule. So simple way to remember this, make sure you have a 2 GB card. That is very important. The other thing is make sure it's formatted into the FAT file. I think it goes up to 4 GB if I'm not mistaken, but a 2 GB, in fact they even say that down here, formatting a 2 GB USB to the FAT system. And that will, when you turn, you'll plug this in to the USB port, turn on your system, and it'll pop up and ask you if you want to download the engine data. And yes is the answer. So that way we can see that. Moving on. So those are the systems that can be compatible with it, that will work. Like I said, G1000, G1000 NXI, that's Perspective, Perspective Plus. G3000 will be your Perspective Plus Touch. And those G7 users, they do work. I put multiple G7s in, and now they actually have formatting for it. Won't look exactly the same, but it does work. So we'll go back to the website here. Now, everything I'm going to show you how to do today, it's free. So you don't have to worry about paying in. However, if you have a fleet of aircraft, or if you have a flight school, it uses an AirSync card. It'll plug that in, it'll get you your information, and it'll upload it directly to FlySto. It's quite a system. That's also quite a bit of money. So if you see any type of benefit to that, if you see the value in that, you can go to that, buy now, look through the options, things like that. But everything today is free. So first off, they even call it perspectives, a nod to the Cirrus guys. You can see multiple different, as I say, perspectives. So the first one that they're referring to is a 2D version, 2D or 3D maps. So the first one that they're showing here is your 2D map, and it's kind of giving you the map of everywhere where they went. Down low here, there is a profile view basically of what you did, and then on whether it's 2D, 3D, or the cockpit view, as they call it, you will have these. So where you took off from, where you landed, you can choose the entire flight, you can choose the departure, you can choose the landing, second departure, second landing. It'll give you the flags, which basically are saying these are caution zones or you're near caution zones. So CHTs at 350 for 38 minutes. You can also customize these on your own. That maybe be for a future advanced course. Your indicated airspeed was 80 knots. It's kind of hard to read, but we'll go over all this stuff. That's your 2D map. Your 3D will show you kind of a side height above the ground. It will kind of give you your ground clearance while still showing your 2D path. But this kind of gives you your height above the ground as well. Cockpit view, that's the one a lot of people like. It's fancy. It uses the cesium ion information, takes your height, your GPS position, your speed, and it basically mimics everything that's going on with your aircraft as if there was a camera mounted right to the front. The other part of this is if you do have a camera mounted to the front looking out, you can plug that in here and it'll have your PFD, all the numbers and everything with your video, which looks super professional. And then finally, the one that I use quite a bit, which is the graph of everything. So graph of your CHTs, graph of your airspeed, graph of your EGTs, your TITs. All of these things can be customized into the graph, and you can be looking at them. Oil pressure, oil temperature, pretty much everything. So this is really nice to be looking at. If somebody says, hey, on climb out, I noticed my CHTs got really hot. Okay, let's look at that. I'll probably put fuel flow up there too. That helps keep them cool. And usually we'll find that fuel flow maybe isn't as high as it should be. If that's the case, then we will bump up the fuel a little bit, usually bring those CHTs down, as long as they're all within reason. So that's pretty common use as well. As it says here, this is for your landing. It'll grade your landing. It wants you to set up a approach that is stable. And so I found that when I know these numbers, I can get pretty close to 100 every time. But also that's kind of nice because as I'm coming in the back of my mind, I'm like, maybe I should be at 500 when I'm approaching my final. Or I'm at 500 and I'm still on base and I realize I need to hold that until I'm on final. It's just kind of a voice in the back of your head after you know the metrics. that tell you, hey, you do better here, which is always a good thing. Anytime we can be better. So in this case, you are reviewing your landing, and it does give you a grade. So we all get to go back to grade school and get graded, but it'll make you a good pilot overall. Here, it's showing your pattern in comparison with a standard pattern. And so it's just a suggestion, doesn't mean you have to at all, but it just kind of compares you to a descent rate and everything that is considered stable. So it's a good positive tool. And here, it's your indicated airspeed below 500 feet. So that's one of the metrics that it likes to keep going, is it wants you to be stable on your airspeed as well. And so it'll grade you based off of that. So as you can see, you can customize the flag rules. So say you want to make sure that your CHTs never exceed 380. You can set that in here as a flaggable notion and make sure that when you get done with your flights, go back and check, see if you went over 380. You should probably be pretty aware of that while you're flying, but just as a rule, or one of the things that you could do is check your history, see how many times that plane has been over 380. What we use commonly is the 400 mark, but making sure that you catch it before 390 is important. So for instance, if you're buying an aircraft and you see that it's been over 420 a multitude of times, including maybe, I don't know, half the flights, that would be a concern. So we sometimes see things like that. Not good, but it does happen. So if you're doing a pre-buy and the owner doesn't want to give you all this, that's maybe a red flag all of its own. So that's one of the ways that we can use this to help us. One of the cool things is it grades where you end up on the landing. So it'll show you distance from center line left or right. It'll show you that metric as you're approaching too, so you can see how close you are to center line as you come down and land. It will grade your cruise based off of your POH numbers for your aircraft. So first things first, you want to set your aircraft in there. Then it'll give you POH numbers for your aircraft, which is also helpful. You kind of know where you're at. It kind of gives you guidelines, so you kind of know where to set your fuel. Again, you should know all this already, but this just kind of helps maybe in the back of your mind, make you a little better pilot, know what your true airspeed number should be. And again, video here is a demonstrated view of what that video looks like, overlaying with the numbers and kind of showing you a map down here as well. ADS-B traffic, so if you have ADS-B in and that data is being logged, you will see your other traffic out there. You'll get wake turbulence notifications on heavier aircraft. It's pretty cool, basically showing you where you almost missed somebody, maybe not as cool, things like that. And here you can kind of see the demo of that. It's a helpful tool maybe to help learn spacing. So if you land and you're like, wow, I was pretty close to that 172 that was training in front of me in my Cirrus, maybe I can space myself out a little bit more, so that way next time I don't have to worry about them making the taxiway or rolling out all the way to the end of the runway. I can give him plenty of space. And I think it does 30-second, 1 minute, and 2 minute wake turbulence warnings, depending on the size of the aircraft. And weather, if you have ADS-B in, you may have access to weather. If it's logging it, then it'll show up. So perspective, perspective plus, you're going to see weather. Whatever you were dealing with at the time, you will see that in FlySto. So one thing that we'll go right now and do is we'll do a demo of it. They do have a demo that allows you to play with it, and then we'll look at some real numbers as well. So on here, for instance, we have, looks like McClellan, Palomar to McClellan. So they took off and landed, probably a training flight, especially given what's on here as well. One of the ways we could do this, we can look at our takeoff. And here we have kind of our profile of the takeoff. And it's going to give us a little bit of everything. So 74 knots rotation at 100 feet. And if I highlight over or hover over this, it'll give me 397 baro, 87 knots at 100 feet. And we're climbing at 648 feet per minute. So here it even gives you switched comms as you accelerated, gives us the wind. So an average wind of 224 at 10 knots. Up here it shows us bank, 17 degrees of bank, and it also gives us call outs 1,000, 1,500 feet. Upon landing, it kind of does the same thing, but in reverse, shows us speed slowing down, gives us an average of 193 at 14 knots. And even if we come into land, it'll give us the weather at the airport at the time when we landed, what we were picking up. So no wind, what a nice day. And 2994 looks like what the altimeter is. 30 degrees, dew point of 9, and pretty clear as well. So in this case, they graded out at 99%. Pretty good. If I was posting something on my website, I'd want to make sure it was pretty high as well. So you can see here what those metrics are. If you click on it, down here, it says 99%. So you have your final intercept. They were at 400. They won them at 500, so they got a 1 out of 2. That's where you got your 99%. They did good on the flaps 100% height of 800 feet. They want that above 500. Indicated airspeed below 500. They want 79 to 87 knots. Well, that's where they were at. They want below 87 knots, so they got that. Max descent rate below 500. Descent deviation below 500, so it gives you your glide slope and it tells you high or low based off of that number. 50 foot indicated airspeed, they want below 82 knots. This was 78. True or touchdown indicated airspeed is 61 knots. They want you below 72. Those of us flying Cirrus know that the slower you are on touchdown, the better. Less energy to create other issues. Touchdown pitch, they do grade the pitch, 3.1. They want it above 2. Again, landing pitch in Cirrus, very important. Touchdown crab angle, and they demonstrate this in another graph. They say low, they want it below 4 degrees. And touchdown from centerline, they were a little bit left of centerline, or right, I don't remember which. But 9 feet, they want you inside of 15 feet from centerline, which that's pretty wide. And if we go to the next landing, it'll also grade you this here. Here, they were 64 feet below their descent profile. So they gave them a 3 out of 4 on that one as well. Takeoffs, again, they'll show you all that. So if we go down to landing, we saw the score. They want you, or they say here, final intercept, autopilot off, and it tracks autopilot usage. So maybe that's something interesting. The more autopilot you use, the longer that metric is. And there's all kinds of ways to find that information in here. So they used not necessarily that they used, but they ended up being closest to a 3.5 degree glide slope. And they were 64 degrees off of that. So if you look at this, here you can see the glide slope down. It's a little higher than the ILS glide slope. And right here, you're 64 feet below that 3.5. So that is one example. Flaps in at 100% at 700 feet. They're hoping to do that before 600 feet, so that's good there. And if we keep looking, so flare, it tells you how long you're in your flare. They were in the flare for 3 seconds, which that's not bad. And it covered 300 feet in that process. So here was your touchdown, Here's the runway, and then after that's the ground roll. So everything's from left to right. So they were in a SR20 G6. The average is 5 seconds. So they compare you to the average. And you can see here that dash line is the average. So you can go in and see a bunch of different stuff. Impact low. So you can see G's upon landing from center line. So I said it wrong earlier. They were right of center line. And here you can see the center line is indicated at the green. The blue is where you're at. So they were 8 feet right of center line. And again, 61 knots, pitch 3 degrees, and you can see that pitch oscillation. And then also here, it will show you where you touch down at 1,500 feet from the end of the runway. Again, you can look at impact, you can look at your vertical speed, power input, bank. So it looks like they were maybe working to keep it on center line. Pitch, speed, height, and altitude, which gives you the profile and the top-down view so you can see where you're at. And that's all in the two-dimensional. Again, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can look at the entire flight. And again, you can see the profile. If we look at the 3D in this view, you see it uses satellite imagery and gives you an overview. We'll lower that a little bit so we can better see. And you can click and pull, drag, whatever you want to call it, so you can see kind of where you're at. All these white aircraft are traffic that you came across while you were in 3D mode. And again, down here kind of gives you your information. So it kind of gives you a standby attitude indicator, basically. And here's the overall profile view. So if we go to the cockpit view, and we say we want to see that last landing, I can hit play on this, and I'm going to full screen this, because we already covered all this over here. So here you can see we have the glide slope. We are on the glide slope. We have captured it, it looks like. Up here you can see your scoreboard. So your WNUB inbound on the localizer. You're on the glide slope. Autopilot is on. You have your manifold pressure and power percentage here. RPM is 2,500. Gallons fuel used is down here. Current fuel flow, oil temp, oil pressure, your electrical, and then down here it's covering your CHTs. And here's a top-down 2D map of what you're doing. So as you can see, we're coming in, and we can speed this up too, because our target's pretty far down. All right, so here we can see we're coming in. This is the runway here. This is our trend vector. So we're seeing all of that. We're a little high of glide slope. It looks like there's somebody on the runway in front of us. So now the glide slope is gone. We're landing. Our AGL is 150, so we're probably point. for the runway a little bit. So here we go, we're in the flare, we're bleeding off airspeed, and the second we touch down, this trend vector goes away. So we have touchdown. And again, once you pull power back, you can see that we have now, our oil pressure has dropped. So it's basically everything that you'd be seeing in the cockpit is what you're seeing on here. And again, that is the landing portion. And again, same for takeoff. You can watch the numbers kind of go up. Here, we're seeing fuel flow, seeing manifold pressure, 2957, a little low on RPM. I'd expect that to be a little bit higher, but within reason, and 18 gallons an hour of fuel flow. So now we're off, we've got the trend vector, we're flying. Looks like we get to go out over the ocean. So on this one, it does 1,550 feet versus the takeoff runway available, 4,800 feet. Our rotation was at 71 knots, 74 liftoff, 96 power, and the fuel flow of 18.2. So those, it's handy that it gives all those numbers. And then finally, we can go in and we can take a look at CHTs. I need to switch this to entire flight. You see CHTs and what they're doing. Say I wanted to know fuel flow. So here you can see they're doing their mag check. Clearly this is a Lycoming. They're at 2200, 2250. They drop down. 70 drop. And that one looks like an 80 drop. So within limits of each other and overall. So things like that you can tell from looking at FlySto. If I plug in volts, we can look here, 27.7, 28.8 the whole time. Great. Looks like their alternators are working. Stuff like that. So moving on from all this, a lot of people wonder, okay, so how do I get all this figured out and put into FlySto? So what I would do is you go in here, you click the Add button, Browse Files. In this case, I have our aircraft loaded in here. Open with some duplicates. Here it's uploading and processing. All right, we hit OK, and it takes us to our site. It's as simple as that. So if there's weather, you can see that. If it's sunny, if it's stormy, you see all of that in here as kind of an overview. Total gallons used, total block flight time, everything like that. So we can take a look at some of my boss's flights. Just kidding. I'm going to use the flight that I used in his plane. So we went out to Hugoton recently. So this is an actual flight that I was involved with. We can kind of see here. So if I go in and we do full screen. So I'm going to do CHTs. So we can see here, we were doing some climbing. Leveled off, which we can see that here too. So let's do, so here you can see all of that. So I climbed to 4,500. I think that day it was a little rough there still. So we continued climbing on up to 6,500. And again, we were just going an hour away from home. So we wasn't like we were going too terrible far. But you can see here, as we were climbing, fuel flow was 36.9. Manifold pressure, that's the one thing that I didn't have in here yet. Manifold pressure, there we go. So manifold pressure was 36.4, right where it's supposed to be. And we climbed out, didn't have any issues there. It looks like everything was behaving itself. It was a little warm that day, so 370 CHTs, 369, kind of kept it right in there. That is your graph view of that flight. If we wanted to look at this, well, as I'm on my takeoff roll, you see fuel flow coming up as I ease into it. We're at 173. Manifold's pressure stabilizes a little over 36. 36 fuel flow coming off the ground. So you can see all that information. EGT, still have my flaps at 50 until I'm clear of all obstacles. I've got my speed above 90 knots, so we're good there. So you should see here shortly, there we go, flaps up. Still hand flying. So if I pause that, we can go in and look at the 3D of the flight. So this is of the takeoff itself. If I back out of this, you can see the climb out, entire flight. Doesn't do so well there, but say I did my landing, you can see I have a nice constant descent, autopilot off, entered the downwind, base, final, and it grades my landing. So how did I do? 98%. Okay, it wasn't 100. Everybody wants 100. I get it. Me too. But I came in a little high, so I had to lose some altitude. It didn't like that. And because of that, I was a little bit fast. So I was 91 knots instead of under 90. And I was 1,100 feet per minute descent instead of 1,000. So there you go. But I touched down low from center line. 1 degree of crab. There was a crosswind that day. 4.3 on pitch. I was at 65 knots, so under 70. My 50-foot speed was 82. Anybody been to western Kansas knows that it's pretty windy out there usually. So those were my numbers upon landing. If I go to the 2D version, it'll give me all that information. So there we go, 5-knot crosswind, which is pretty calm for western Kansas. You can go down, I can compare that with the average. So you can see here, average would have given me maybe a little bit longer final. You can go down here to my flare. It was 6 seconds in the flare, well 5.6, normal is 5.3. Pitch oscillation, so I came in, maintained my pitch. Average 0.9, average for the all other turbos, G5 through G7 is 1.1. My pitch, low impact crab angle, low from center line, that's 2 feet left. So that's my bad. Try and keep it as close to center line as you can. Anything within 5 I think is okay. But you can see my speed, my pitch. So I was slowly bringing my pitch up into the flare. Impact 0.02 Gs. Altitude kind of gives you an idea of how high you were. So I was in the flare for quite some time. Height and distance from threshold. So you can see all of these metrics if you're breaking down this flight. again, total landing distance with the rollout, I knew I didn't have to turn off till the end. So 3,100 feet versus the landing distance available of 5,011. I kept it fast, saved the brakes, and just kind of rolled out to the end. So that's the analysis of a flight. Say you want to look at my landing. We'll go full screen. So here I'm turning base. You see my airspeed in my base. So as I'm turning to final, we know that I am high. And so I did have to pitch down in order to meet the requirements for landing. So there we go. Touchdown. Again, if I go back and I look at all this here, 1150. Okay. So again, that's me showing you how to put your information in. One of the other things, so that's basically just individual flights. If you go in here, you can see all of your approaches. All the flags here. You can see startup, taxi, takeoff, autopilot, approach, traffic, above ground level, baro. CHTs are a good one. EGTs are another one. Fuel imbalance to let you know if there was any inattentive flying, manifold pressure anytime it's gone too high, oil pressure if it's gone too high or low, oil temperature if it's gone too high, if the vernotherm didn't open up and your oil cooler isn't doing its job, RPMs, did you overspeed, things like that. All these can be seen in here. Individual aircraft, if you had crew, you can do crew profiles. I just use this as my own. So with 935, you can see insights. So you can see totals, total flights, total times, months, approaches, total amounts of fuel used. That's an astounding number. Total distance flown, so 24,700 miles. All these fun things. This one's kind of the fun one. But I go in here to kind of get an overview of the... In here, I go engine, and I do average CHTs. So you can go in here and you can see, like here, 412. That was an off day. Things like that. You can see all the cylinder head temperature averages for, you can put in it by year, by the whole amount, all of it. So you can see a little bit of everything. Down here you can see the trends. This one gets, what was it, number one? One gets hotter, then colder, also by the season. So you can kind of see those trends as the seasons go, and also it kind of lets you know if there's, if one goes kind of crazy, maybe it's a plugged injector, things like that. You can see some of that information in here. Landing, approach score. So you can see all the approach scores here. Flights, you can see your true airspeed. You can do manual flying time, as I said. So here's 53 minutes of manual flying time, 36 minutes, 8 minutes, 13 minutes, things like that. But you can also see the average. So you can see the average of the regular SR22 average versus us. Takeoffs, you can kind of see your takeoff airspeed, indicated airspeeds. You can see your 50-foot pitch, your 50-foot airspeed, lift-off fuel flow. So this is a good one to know kind of where your aircraft's at, where it could be. Even on startup, volts, if you're seeing a voltage drop, so volts minimum and initial, you can kind of tell whether or not your battery is trending down. Just some ideas. So that's all under insights. So all of these things you can take a look at to kind of figure out what is going on with your aircraft, things like that. It's a very helpful tool. So again, that's kind of a intro to FlySto. You can dig in a little deeper on your own. Also, I'll probably put a couple more videos up of what its capabilities are as a whole for you as a pilot analyzing your flights. The other one is for you as an owner wanting to know about their engine. I can put that up as well. I'll go into a little more detail on what we look at, or maybe give some scenarios of what we have witnessed here on this. Another thing that we will be doing is posting this to our website. So right now it says coming soon under the Wells Learning Lounge. I'll be putting it right here, so you'll see that as well. And then the other thing that you can check out if you would like to is our products. We are introducing a new set of cup holders for the G1 to G6. The G7s have different style cup holders. So G1 through G6 cup holders with attaching backing plates, and you can see their operations here. So if you need to, go check that out at our website and take a look if that's an interest to you as well. And again, my name is Bryant Yoder, and I'm glad you popped by the video to take a look at this. Hopefully this will be a helpful tool for you in the future, and we look forward to seeing you, taking care of you, however we may help. If this video has helped, please give it a like, thumbs up. We appreciate you taking your time. Thank you. Bye.